Why INFJs can be your worst nightmare. Most people see the surface first. Soft voice, gentle eyes, patient listening. They notice the calm. They notice the kindness. They notice the quiet strength that does not demand attention. INFJs do not enter rooms loudly. They do not compete for volume. They do not perform emotion for effect. They move quietly through the world. They make space for others. They absorb tension without complaint. They often carry what no one else wants to hold. Conflict, confusion, unspoken grief. And most of the time, that softness is real. It is not a mask. It is not strategy. It is their natural orientation toward life. But depth has layers. And not all layers are warm. There is a threshold inside the INFJ. It is not dramatic. It is not impulsive. It does not flare up in public. It is measured. Carefully. Quietly. They tolerate more than most. They explain again. They clarify misunderstandings. They forgive subtle wounds. They try again when others would already walk away. They believe in growth. They believe in repair. They believe people can evolve. Until something shifts. A boundary crossed too many times. A truth twisted once too often. A loyalty quietly betrayed when it mattered most. At first, they rationalize it. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was miscommunication. They give benefit of the doubt. More than once. More than twice. But each repetition leaves a mark. Not loud. Not visible. Just recorded. When that internal line is crossed, there is no explosion. No screaming. No public scene. No dramatic exit. There is absence. They stop arguing. Stop clarifying. Stop reaching. They stop offering emotional labor. They stop translating themselves for someone who refuses to understand. Silence replaces effort. And that silence feels heavier than anger ever could. Because anger still cares. Anger wants change. Anger wants reaction. Silence does not. Silence is the sound of a decision already made. When an INFJ stops explaining, they are no longer trying to be understood. They have accepted that understanding is not mutual. When they stop trying, they have already grieved the connection internally. The loss has been processed. The disappointment has been faced. When they stop caring, it is not temporary. It is not a tactic. It is final. This is not rage. It is closure without announcement. It is the quiet closing of a door that was open for a very long time. And when an INFJ becomes your worst nightmare, it does not echo. It does not threaten. It simply ends. No warning sirens. No countdown. Just distance that does not reverse. INFJs are dangerous because they see everything first. INFJs live in observation mode. Not suspicious. Just attentive. They watch before they speak. They listen between the lines. They register what is not said. Long before conflict surfaces, they have sensed it forming. They feel the shift in tone, the subtle withdrawal, the inconsistency in energy. They notice contradictions, words that do not match behavior, promises that subtly shift over time. They feel emotional pressure tactics before others recognize them as manipulation. They sense distance before it is declared, resentment before it is voiced, disrespect before it becomes obvious. They may not comment immediately, but internally, they are mapping the pattern. They rarely confront at the first sign, not because they are unaware, because they are confirming. They do not rely on one moment. They look for repetition. They gather patterns. Tone changes. Energy shifts. How someone behaves when stressed. How someone treats people they do not need. They observe who shows up consistently, and who performs only when watched. They notice who listens, and who waits for their turn to speak. They notice who apologizes sincerely, and who apologizes to regain control. By the time tension becomes visible, the INFJ already understands the entire structure behind it. They know where it started. They know what triggered it. They know where it leads if unchanged. This foresight is rarely discussed. It is not mystical. It is cumulative empathy combined with pattern recognition. What makes them dangerous is not force. It is foresight, not aggression. Awareness. And awareness makes manipulation difficult. because they see it forming before it fully takes shape. INFJs don't react emotionally, they respond strategically. Many expect emotion on the surface: raised voices, immediate confrontation, visible frustration. That is rarely what happens. When pushed too far, the INFJ becomes very calm, still, composed. But that calm is not softness. It is decision. It is the moment when emotion stops leading, and clarity takes control. Emotions move inward. Clarity moves forward. They stop defending themselves. They stop arguing their intentions. They stop chasing validation. They speak less. They reveal nothing unnecessary. Their empathy becomes selective, not withdrawn entirely, but filtered. While others believe the storm has passed, the INFJ has already stepped back internally. They are evaluating quietly. Is this worth repairing? Is trust still intact? Is respect mutual? Is growth possible here? If the answer is no, they do not negotiate endlessly. They do not beg for awareness. They do not force maturity. They reposition. Sometimes subtly, sometimes completely. They invest elsewhere. They limit access. They adjust expectations downward. And once that internal shift locks in, it rarely unlocks. Because it was not emotional impulse. It was conclusion. INFJs can cut emotional access completely. INFJs do not seek revenge. They do not aim to punish. They detach. Not dramatically. Not publicly. Internally. The warmth fades. The spontaneous sharing stops. The emotional transparency closes. They stop offering the depth that once felt effortless. They become polite, distant, unavailable in ways that cannot be argued against. Because there is no fight to challenge, only absence. For someone who relied on their understanding, their insight, their quiet loyalty, this withdrawal feels disorienting. The empathy that once flowed freely is now contained, carefully guarded. The door that was always open is simply no longer unlocked. And the most unsettling part is that they will not announce it. They will not threaten it. They will not dramatize it. They will just live, as if the emotional contract never existed. No bitterness displayed. No resentment performed. Just neutrality. And neutrality from someone who once cared deeply feels colder than anger. INFJs give deeply when they care. Not halfway. Not cautiously. Fully. They invest time. They invest energy. They invest attention. They listen without interrupting. They remember the details others dismiss. They sense what is heavy before it is spoken. They support quietly. They protect without announcing it. They defend in absence. They understand without needing explanation. They anticipate needs. They adjust to emotional climates. They offer reassurance without being asked. Their presence feels steady, safe, grounded. People relax around them. People confess around them. People feel seen around them. So when that access disappears, the shift is immediate. The warmth cools. The attentiveness fades. The emotional shelter is no longer there. Conversations feel shorter. Responses feel neutral. Energy feels contained. There is no speech about it. No warning. No emotional manifesto. They simply stop offering themselves. And what once felt constant is suddenly unavailable. That absence creates its own echo. INFJs remember everything. They do not forget emotional experiences. Not because they cling. Because they process deeply. They remember the tone. The timing. The look in someone's eyes when something shifted. They remember how something felt in their body. The tension in their chest. The hesitation in their voice. They remember what was said. And what was carefully avoided. They remember promises made during comfort. And behavior displayed during stress. They may forgive the moment. But they do not erase the pattern. Each repeated boundary crossing is stored. Not as bitterness. As information. They track consistency. Or the lack of it. They compare words over time. They notice if apologies lead to change. They observe if insight leads to growth. So when they finally walk away, it is not a reaction. It is accumulation. A quiet stacking of moments that build toward clarity. Moments that seemed small individually, but formed a structure together. And once that clarity settles, they rarely revisit the decision, because it was built slowly, carefully, intentionally. INFJs can outgrow you without warning. Growth for them is internal first, invisible, reflective, private. They question their own motives. They refine their standards. They adjust their boundaries. They read. They think. They analyze their own behavior. They do not announce every realization. This evolution is subtle. Others may not notice it happening. Until one day, the INFJ no longer responds the same way. What once felt acceptable now feels misaligned. What once drained them is no longer tolerated. What once felt like compromise now feels like self-betrayal. The old dynamic stops working. To others, this feels abrupt, like distance, like abandonment. To the INFJ, it feels like coherence, like finally matching their inner truth with their outer behavior. Alignment does not negotiate. It does not apologize for growth. It simply stands still and lets what no longer fits fall away. INFJs expose truth without saying a word. They do not need confrontation to reveal reality. Their silence speaks structure. When they withdraw, imbalances become visible. Who initiates contact? Who carries conversation? Who depends more than they give? Their absence highlights dependency. Their calm exposes manipulation. When they stop over-explaining, misunderstandings become obvious. When they stop compensating, immaturity stands alone. What once hid inside arguments now stands in quiet space. People often feel more exposed by an INFJ's disengagement than by any direct accusation, because there is nothing to defend against. No raised voice, no debate, no emotional chaos to distract from the core issue. Just a mirror. And clarity can feel sharper than conflict. INFJs are unreachable once trust is broken. Trust is not casual for them. It is sacred, carefully built, slowly offered. They do not trust easily. But when they do, they trust deeply. When it cracks, they do not panic. They analyze. They seek understanding. They ask themselves if repair is possible. They consider context. They consider stress. They consider intent. But repeated betrayal shifts something fundamental. Respect erodes. Safety dissolves. The door begins to close. Not loudly. Not angrily. Deliberately. They reduce vulnerability. They limit access to inner thoughts. They stop sharing unfiltered emotion. And once it shuts, it does not reopen easily. Not from pride. From principle. They choose self-respect over emotional chaos. There is no dramatic ending. No prolonged negotiation. Just distance. Steady. Final. INFJs do not need revenge. Revenge requires attachment. It requires ongoing emotional investment. They prefer peace. When hurt deeply, they do not plot retaliation. They reflect. They withdraw. They recalibrate. They redirect. Energy moves away from what wounded them toward what restores them. Meaning, growth, mutual respect. They invest in people who reciprocate. They invest in work that aligns. They invest in environments that feel safe. The most unsettling realization for others is not anger. It is irrelevance. Being removed from the INFJ's inner world. Without ceremony. No more updates. No more emotional access. No more deep conversation. Indifference replaces emotion. And indifference does not fluctuate. It is steady, quiet, complete. INFJs know where it hurts most. They understand people in layers. Fears, insecurities, unspoken longings, hidden doubts. They sense vulnerabilities instinctively. They know which words would land hardest. They know which truths would sting. But they do not weaponize them. Their default is protection. Even when disappointed. Even when hurt. Only when pushed beyond reason might they reveal a truth that lands precisely where it stings. Not to destroy, but to clarify. Yet even then, they rarely attack directly. They withdraw support. They remove understanding. They stop cushioning reality. And for many, Losing that steady understanding hurts more than criticism ever could. INFJs become your worst nightmare only if you deserve it. Their natural state is gentle, patient, forgiving, deeply considerate. You do not meet their colder side by accident. It appears after repetition, repeated disrespect, emotional dishonesty, manipulation disguised as affection, boundaries ignored too many times. They do not turn cold suddenly. They go quiet, after exhausting every softer option, after explaining calmly, after compromising thoughtfully, after hoping sincerely, after giving second chances, and sometimes third. By the time distance arrives, it has been earned, not demanded. If you're an INFJ, if this feels familiar, you are not cruel. You are conscious. You feel deeply. You analyze thoroughly. You decide carefully. Your silence is not punishment. It is protection. Your distance is not rejection. It is alignment. If someone calls you heartless, after you finally walked away, pause. Remember the nights you reconsidered, the conversations you rehearsed, the patience you extended quietly. You stayed when it was uncomfortable. You explained when it was tiring. You forgave when it was heavy. Leaving was not impulsive. It was the last boundary. After every other one was tested, you did not choose distance first. You chose it. When nothing else preserved your peace. When staying required self-abandonment. Walking away was not dramatic. It was necessary. Quietly, clearly, without the need to look back.